three main problems with the black community is education, culture, and fatherless homes. Yeah. That's the problem. And until you correct those issues, you're never going to fix nothing.
Mr. Zaway Murphy, how's it going? I hear that you do not identify as an African-American male, and I wanted to have you on here.
Yeah, oh, man, I appreciate it. Now, I do not. Several reasons why I do not, and why I always tell a lot of my counterparts to not do that. Number one, I was born in the 80s here in the United States of America. I don't know anything about African culture. I don't identify with them. Like I said, I don't even know how to get to Africa. I was born right here. And it's a fatal mistake to do this. Call yourself African American because you kind of put yourself in this entitled space where you feel like you are not part of the country that you're in. And you try to distance and separate yourself. And it's hard to grow that way. I always tend to say, you have to deal with people where they're at. And the first way to solve a problem is to admit that you got one. I'm Black American. I was born in the United States of America, not Africa. I don't know their culture or anything. And to be honest with you, if you talk to a real African, a lot of them, they don't like Black people. They don't, because they realize that Black people do not represent their culture. They're nothing like them. The only thing they have in common is because they share the same skin color in most cases. Yeah. Not all the time, but in most cases. So that's why I don't identify as African American, because I was born in this country, not Africa. I know nothing about it.
That makes sense. I was always confused by people that identify by something else outside of America, because like me, I'm such a mutt. I mean, I'm 3/4 Scots-Irish, but I'm 10% Nigerian. I mean, I can actually trace, not just through DNA, genetically, the family,
right.
But so what do you call me? It's just, so I've always I'm an American. I'm just an American. I usually just say I'm just some dumb hick from Oklahoma. I mean, it's just who I am. But people, no, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, we spend so much time on titles, and color and trying to separate us all, when in actuality, we're all one and the same. We're more alike than we're not. And a lot of people don't like to think, especially in the Black community. Black community like to think that there's some type of God or deity. No matter what you ask a Black person, it's always on a higher level than what it really actually is. Yeah. When it comes down to the kids, the women, or the men. I find myself in more relation with more Caucasian or Indian people than I am with my own community. But because I express that, whether it be on YouTube or whether it be on some type of any type of platform, I'm labeled as what they call a sellout or a coon or a Uncle Tom, because I don't share the same narrative you do. And that's not the way things are supposed to work. That's what I call indoctrination.
Yeah.
It's impossible to live on this planet with all of the different type of races of people and think you're going to be successful by yourself. Even millionaires know that you cannot be successful by yourself. You have to have some type of connection and other resources, because you don't have it all. And that's called a network, But for some reason on my side of the fence, they think that, oh, well, you can do it by yourself. As long as you got a little hope and a little manifesting power, it's going to happen. But I find it funny. It's been 60 years and ain't nothing happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I've noticed all that it ever does is separate people. And in fact, I have friends that are not racist at all that have come up to me and said, dude, I've lately, in the past couple of years, found myself not liking certain groups of people simply because it's so pushed on them that you have to do this, you have to feel this way, you have to believe in this, else you're a racist. And everybody wants to call people racist for this or racist for that. I thought it just meant that you didn't like anybody of this color. But now it's like, if you say certain words, you're racist. I'm like, how? If racism is a context, it's not, it's actually a neutral word. It doesn't mean like or dislike. It means that you're judging something based on a certain race, judging good or judging bad.
Right.
But, either way, it's racist, in today's society, it's like, I say society, I personally believe, being close enough around the news, not just watching the news, like anchorman and talking to people that are on the news all the time, is that it's not reality. I don't think most Black people think that they're African American and better than. I don't think they separate themselves, but I do, and I may be wrong. I'm very well possibly could be. I'm not black, and I don't. Every part of the world is different. I mean, black culture in Oklahoma is probably different than black culture in Georgia. But so same thing with white. Every culture, and people don't understand that we all have our own separate cultures within America. America is huge. I mean, so we develop cultures in our little areas, and I've said things that people will call racist isn't racist. It's like the 54% of all violent felonies are created by young black men. That's a statistical fact.
Correct.
But does that mean because they're black, because they're black, they're doing this, and that's what we're saying? No, not at all. It's the culture.
The culture that it was raised in.
In that same area that you see these crimes, white people are just as much violent as the black people. It's just mostly a black area, and of course, which tends to be, I say tends, trying to be nice, it's a Democratic controlled area. It's an area where they produce victimhood.
I mean, that's facts.
And I'm not saying out of judgment. I look at numbers and statistics. Will you find a place that's one off? Yes. In the top 20 most violent cities in the U.S., 19 of them are Democrat ran. One of them is a Republican, but I got a secret about that Republican city. That Republican city happens to be Tulsa. Tulsa's mayor is registered as a Republican, but he runs everything as a Democrat. He was a Democrat before he ran for mayor. He became a Republican so he could get voted in. This is a red state. You're not going to win. I mean, we got money from Bloomberg. We're a Bloomberg city. I mean, you cannot be a Republican and get money from Bloomberg. If you are, you're not a real Republican. But it's statistical fact. It's when you turn people into victims, they find themselves having a crutch. This is why this is happening.
And I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you're good. No, I was just saying I'm glad you said that, because that's what I meant by, people in the black community, they kind of separate themselves from the country. Yeah. Because I'm gonna use it like this. So say, if you associate yourself with the word African American, what's the first thing a lot of people think about if you say Africa? Like for instance, if I told you Africa, what would be the first thing you would think about?
And my thought is the criminal element there. It's a very violent place. I mean, I see tribal violence, and I'm not talking about tribal like we think of like little village tribal, as in like these groups of guerrilla warfare.
Well, see how you had that difference of opinion?
Yeah.
See how you had that? Well, most black people, when they hear Africa, first word that comes to their mind is slave. I've proven it, because I have went out and interviewed a lot of people, and the first word that comes to their mind is slave, and not what you thought. In our community, a lot of people think that it was only black people enslaved, but that is so far from the truth. It was whites, Mexicans, Indians, and a whole lot of people.
I'm a direct descendant of slaves. The funny thing is, on one side, it's black. I've got Scottish and Irish slaves on the other side.
Right.
I mean, in fact, my very first descendant that came to America on my Scottish side was Daniel Hayes. He actually got caught by a Mohawk Indian and thrown into slavery and then sold to a Canadian. And then he eventually bought himself out. A lot of people don't understand that slaves, a good majority of slaves could make money, and they could earn a living. And they could, if they knew a trade, and could buy themselves freedom. It was not just what you see on TV. TV has ruined people's idea of reality. One, because Hollywood knows that they can change it. I mean, that new show, that new movie about the Woman King or something. I haven't watched it, but I had to watch it. But I heard that it makes it out like white people went to Africa and got the slaves. It didn't show anything about.
It was actually the reverse.
Yeah, I mean, no white person's going to run into Africa and get killed for some slaves and catch people. They were, it was tribes. It was kind of like the irony. A few years ago, you probably remember when Nancy Pelosi and all the Democratic stools dressed in African garb and went in the Capitol and kneeled. Yeah, the colors that they were wearing actually represented a specific tribe, because they were too ignorant to understand the colors. And colors go per tribe. Well, the tribe that they were representing happened to be a tribe that was known for enslaving other tribes. I mean, it was
that's what. What do you think the Democratic Party is? That's what I tell a lot of people in my community. You got to understand that the majority of Democratic leaders were slave owners. For instance, take Andrew Jackson. He's on the $20 bill. He was the largest slave owner there was. But when you tell them that, it is a big rebellion to them. It's like you told them something that's not true. And I hate to say it, but a lot of black people are just indoctrinated in program. They're walking around like literally zombies, and they don't know anything for themselves. They don't want to know, So the three main problems with the black community is education, culture, and fatherless homes. That's the problem. And
And
until you correct those issues, you're never going to fix nothing.
and now they're it's and I really believe it's planned out this way. And it sounds very conspiratorial, but we know conspiracies are real, and it's just a
True.
theory because it hasn't been proven yet. But that doesn't mean that it is or isn't. This is just a thought process, that
Mhm.
it was starting to get very known that the way history really worked out, and then all of a sudden,
Right.
the schools are starting to teach kids everything except the real facts of the history. I mean, did you know, they like to say that slavery was, America was the last country to end slavery. Here's the thing. Slavery existed for thousands of years in other countries, right? Before they before
Correct.
they out before they outlawed slavery. Slavery existed for 80 years before it
Right.
was outlawed in America. In fact, it was planned to be outlawed in the
Right.
first place, but they didn't think that they could get all the support they could from other countries if they tried to outlaw slavery. And so they did not put it in the writing, but they
Right.
didn't make it where slave was a thing either. And
Right.
then here's something a lot of people don't know. America was the very first country to outlaw the slave trade. So we couldn't bring more slaves in
Right.
or anything like that. So they were
Do you know what
planning, they
party
were
that was?
Republican.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They outlawed
Democrats was against it.
the Republican Party was created solely for to defeat slavery. They were the anti-slave
It was
party.
created in Texas. The
Yep.
Republican Party was created in Texas in 1854 by 150 black people.
Yep.
And that alone amazes me, because a lot of black people like to call me a sellout. But you left the party that freed you. And I'm a sellout, but you left the party that freed you. You ask any modern, or matter of fact, let's take it out to modern. Let's go back to the baby boomer century, time. You ask any older adult, what have you gotten for your Democratic vote? They can't tell you one thing.
Yeah.
What the stuff they can tell you, you probably can write it on the back of a stamp.
Yep. I was listening to this lady, this older black lady, the other day, and she said, she was joking around at first and saying, if you're not this, then just scroll on. This doesn't have anything to concern with you. She said,
Right.
if you really want to learn how to get to black folks that are voting for Democrat every time. She said she went up to this one lady and she was talking about the economy and stuff. She's like, man, I used to buy a lot more, before it's getting hard. And they're like, yeah, it's getting really hard. And then kept on comparing to the way it was. She said, I voted for Biden the first time, but I'm voting for Trump because the economy was so much better. She's like, you know what? You're right. But that's the truth. You cannot approach anything head on because people get defensive. They automatically think I'm wrong. So therefore I'm, I can't be wrong. Nobody
And
wants
that's
to
what
be wrong.
they're supposed to be defensive. I
Yeah.
made a post the other day on TikTok, and it has gotten a lot of controversy. I said, I hear that myself. A lot of black people want to vote for Trump now, but I turn around, I put a spin on it. I say, black people don't deserve a Donald Trump presidency. They don't, because y'all call this man racist. Y'all don't know him. You don't know nothing about him. To be frank, most black people don't earn enough money to get into the space of this man. So y'all want to call him racist and bigot and all of this stuff. Black people don't deserve it. They don't. Because instead of y'all thinking about, what actually works, it's always for self. Most black people want a handout. They don't care about what you get or who got to pay for it, as long as it comes to them. And that's why I make that statement. And it has been.
Yeah, I saw that one actually. A lot of it is it's taught. You're taught that,
Right.
And I'll say this from my experience. I grew up on food stamps. I grew up around people that
Right.
had food stamps. In the 80s, food stamps was actually paper money. And
Paper,
my mother,
you could tear them off.
yeah, my mother, when I lived with her until I was 8 years old, and we would go to Frida's bar down the street, and she would buy beer using food stamps.
Right.
It was, but I knew people that would quit working so much because they were about to make too much money to be able to get food stamps or welfare.
Right.
And so they would slow down.
Right.
And I remember when I quit using, I had to have, I moved out on my own at 17. And of course I couldn't get on food stamps at all because I was not legally allowed to live on my own. So
Right.
I didn't know what I was going to do because it was a scary thought. It's like, how do people buy food? It never
Right.
occurred to me that people just use cash. They work and they do this. And I had to
Right.
get on food stamps to tell you the difference between conservative and liberal policies. When I was in college and I had to have back surgery,
Right.
I was married and had to get on food stamps because I couldn't work. And so
Right.
I was still enrolled into college, but I wasn't able to
Right.
work. And so I got food stamps. Fast forward under Obama, I get hurt. I get injured again in a car wreck, and I couldn't work. So I'm like, I'm going back to school. I'm going to go try to finish my degree. So I decided to start finishing my degree, and
Right.
I couldn't work. And so I applied for food stamps. She said, and I shit you not, because I'm going to college, that I have to work 15 hours a week to get food stamps. But if I dropped out of college, I didn't have to work at all. And from that
What
point
sense
on, I
does
said,
that
I
make?
am never, ever going to get on food stamps unless it's the last thing I have to do. And that should be the mindset anyway. It should be. And I
Yeah.
tell my wife, it's like, as long as we, like, I've been eligible for food stamps many times.
Mm.
And, you know, heck, I just got off where had this last back surgery. I wasn't working for 8 months, you know,
Right.
and, you know, I even had to have a GoFundMe because I don't have family. I don't have a lot of friends.
Right.
I didn't raise a lot of money. Not enough. But but I'm very thankful for the people that helped, because they didn't have to help me. They don't know me,
Right.
most of them, you know. So I'm thankful when people help me. But I
Right.
also said that as long as I can put food on the table, I'm not going to get help, because that's
Right.
not what it's for. It's not for a lifestyle. It's for a hand
It's
up.
supposed to be temporary.
Yeah, it
Temporary.
was always supposed to be temporary. The whole setup was sold as a temporary idea, but it was a plan. They planned on it. You know, have you seen the government ever start something and then just stop it? Especially when they found
Mm-mm.
out that they can have more control. Oh, I found out that we control the public a lot more, because what better way to control somebody than say, hey, if you vote for me, I'll make sure you get more benefits.
Yeah.
I mean, you
And
know,
what better way to control? What better way to control a family if there's no man there?
oh yeah,
Men are less agreeable than women are. Women
yeah,
tend to agree with a lot of things. So hey, if I give you food stamps, I subsidize your light bill, I'm going to even make it to where you pay little to nothing in rent. But the only stipulation I got is that man cannot be there. But the government says that they always look into things that supposed to be for the best interest of the child. The best interest of any child is to have his father.
yeah,
But when you incentivize women to be alone, you're creating disasters.
yeah.
And that is the one of the hugest issues in the black community. And I'm just gonna say it. It's gonna lead to the destruction. It's going to lead there. It's going.
Thank you for sticking around till the end. Hopefully, I left you either enlightened, lightened, or moved by the experience. If you enjoyed what you saw, could you hit that like and subscribe button right there? And if you didn't, could you still hit that like and subscribe button right there so somebody else has the opportunity to not like what they saw? Thank you.